to another Agile IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Sean Spicer, joined this week by John Petroschek, the Agile IT Migration Master and the Guru of Gotchas. So most of you watching right now, or probably if you're an Agile IT client watching this in a later recording, you've worked with John, you know him, you love him. How you doing today, John?
We're in San Diego, Sean. What's not to like or love? We're doing great.
We had the June gloom yesterday, but
yes.
Yeah, it's nice and sunny today. So today we're going to be going over offboarding on Office 365. This was a session that was requested during one of our former tech talks. You can do a lot of things wrong when you're offboarding in Office 365, and I think the gotcha on that one was one of our clients went in and just deleted a user and lost a whole bunch of information that they didn't expect to. So John's done this, and he's going to take us through the steps.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah, this is a very common question I get when we do our admin training during our Ascend migrations or migrating email up to Office 365. Particularly for anyone that's never really been a big Exchange user. We do a lot of migrations that are from platforms that are not Microsoft specific. So sometimes we get some workflows that people are not used to or patterns that they use for either onboarding, offboarding. So this is a really good thing they go over. It saves data, it saves time, it saves money on not having to license an account. And it saves a lot of processes that you might be used to going through that you've done for decades and decades that now you just don't need to worry about.
Great. And I've seen a couple people on here who aren't on before. Just a little bit about how Tech Talks are formatted. We're going to go ahead and do probably a 10-minute presentation today. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them in the questions panel. We will cut off recording at the end and answer those questions. For those of you online, this is a benefit for Agile IT clients, but we do like to share the session to get that information out there in the general public. Take it away.
All right, so let's get started. So every organization has an offboarding process, and if you don't, you should. It's basically what is the best practice moving forward after somebody leaves. It can be somebody retiring, somebody quitting, they're going to another position, or it could be somewhat contentious and they are having to be asked to leave because of one problem or another. So we have our great volunteer for our offboarding here, Megan. She's a very popular person in the Microsoft crowds as far as demo tenants and things go, but looking at some of the things that she's gone through in her HR file, we've had some problems that haven't been able to be corrected, and she's had some opportunities to work on that just basically never matured anywhere. So
yeah, so for those of you who have watched many Tech Talks or any Microsoft demos, Megan Bowen is the default user account for Microsoft demos. So whenever anything goes wrong in a Microsoft demo, Megan did it. So DLP policy violations, she's the one that fails the phishing attacks, clicks on the malware, it's always Megan. So Megan is a kind of ongoing joke amongst Microsoft partners and Microsoft employees. I'm trying to get a shirt for Microsoft Inspire coming up in July that says this exact thing, who is Megan Bowen, just to see who recognizes the joke. So we're done with it. We're firing Megan today once and for all.
Rip Megan. All right, so let's go through. So there's usually 7 stops you want to go through, or 7 steps that you want to take care of in the whole process. We've had some folks will go through and just automatically want to remove their license and delete them. Some of those processes will be walked through in a short mini wizard to kind of go through these. It does not cover everything, and it doesn't cover every scenario. So these are some of what Microsoft would consider best practices and what you need to do. There's some additional things that I'll kind of speak to going through here, because you might have an environment that is cloud only, and some of these might speak to you directly in one way, and some of you have an environment where you're syncing with Azure Active Directory to your local directory, and you might have some different avenues or things you need to do in addition to this. So I'll kind of touch on those as we go through. So the first one, of course, you want to make sure the mailbox contents are saved, whether it's someone who's been with the organization for a long time that might have some important information in there, or if you're someone who goes through a lot of legal processes, you want to make sure you have all that data for any future need. You can go ahead and take care of that. Let's go through.
Yeah, we're going to go through it live. But first, there's that step 0 that you told me about.
Absolutely. So the first thing we want to do is reset their password. If it's someone who is their last day and they plan their departure, that's great. We can go ahead and reset their password. If it's somebody that, like I said, it might be some contentious reasons they're leaving, you want to reset their password. That usually takes about an hour to take effect depending on how they're accessing their data. So if they're at home and they're on their browser looking at Outlook, or they're in the portal, that could take up to an hour for them to get kicked off. So if it's something you need them to have access removed right away, we recommend going into PowerShell into the tenant and using the revoke Azure AD user all refresh token commandlet. I would do a Google search, and there's some little more discrete instructions on how to use that, but that will reset that token, and the next time they click anything in that window, it will kick them off.
And I will have a link in the blog for the
Okay.
write-up. For those of you watching online, that's in the write-up down below.
One good thing to remember, just by default, for anybody who's a global admin or a password admin in Office 365, whenever you change or reset a password, that checkbox is normally set to send a password out to anybody. Make sure you don't send the password to the person you are resetting or they're offboarding. Just one step to make sure you go through there. The next thing you want to do is go to the user properties, click on OneDrive, click on sign them out, and then initiate the sign out. This will keep them from their getting access to their OneDrive data.
So let's see it. Let's do it.
All right.
Like I said, we're firing Megan. Yep. Here we go. All right, we're up in Office, so we'll go to the admin.
And as soon as we get up through here, we are going to go to active users. And we're going to scroll down, look for Megan here. So here's Megan. We're going to go to their OneDrive. And as it comes up here. We're going to initiate a sign out.
And then reset the password.
And then, of course, we want to go up and reset their password. And let's go here.
I don't know if it's going to let you because we have password enforcement.
All right.
So if you auto-generate, it'll be strong. There you go.
I just made a quick change.
One thing I will say is the demo tenants are secure. That's why we're getting rid of Megan, is because she's blown up all of the
Right.
DLP policies.
Make sure that we're not setting the password in an email. Go ahead and close it out, and their password is reset.
Yep. Now, do we need to save? I'm used to the preview admin for the OneDrive settings after the logout.
You do not. It's just a close.
Great.
Close that. We'll get back to home for our next steps.
There we go.
All right, let's go to the next step here. So one thing we definitely want to do, of course, is make sure we're saving their mailbox contents. And you can do that a couple different ways. You can migrate the mailbox to another user, put them on litigation hold if you want to. So we can actually go ahead and do that. So if you have the licensing available to do a litigation hold, we'll go through that for Megan.
Yeah, now if you have retention policies already set up in Compliance Center, this will happen automatically. But if you don't have retention policies set up, this is a pretty simple way to get it put in.
So first thing we want to do is we want to add a new in-place hold.
Don't swear.
No.
Bye, Megan.
We are going to make sure we get everything set up here. Click on next. We're going to specify the mailbox we want to have available to search. Of course, it's our friend Megan. Click on next. So we want to actually, in the search query, include all content. Of course, you can filter it based off whatever specific requirements you have or criteria you have based on your organization. We're just going to include all content. Hit next. We want to make sure we check the box, at least in this scenario, to place content matching. We want to make sure we hold indefinitely. Hit finish. And give it about another 5 to 10 seconds. Close. Now we can see that Megan Bowen hold status is active as of this date and who created that policy.
Now, one thing that's interesting that I found out is that hold status, yes. Why don't you go ahead and try to delete this one?
Good point. If you try to delete that current policy, it'll give you an error because it still has an active in-place hold. You actually have to go in, turn off the hold status or set it to no, and then you can go ahead and delete that policy.
Yeah, so this is kind of a mini tech talk on how to do an in-place hold. But yeah, if Megan was trying to steal data, or for some reason we felt that there was going to be litigation around her dismissal, or possibly she's being dismissed for litigious reasons, this is a good thing to have available. And this demo tenant does have the licensing, but you do need, what is the exchange license that you need for hold? Is it the type 2?
I believe it's type 2 or E5.
Okay, yeah, great. And that's where we've got that here, is we've got
I
the
could be
E5
wrong.
license.
All right, let's pop back. And
It's doing that
so
thing again.
got a nice little delay. I apologize for that.
You can go ahead and just minimize the browser.
There you go.
go.
Third time's the charm. So those are steps from saving the mailbox contents via in-place hold. Another thing you can do is you can forward from that active account, which is great. However, you are currently burning a license, and there is no good reason to do that in this day and age. What you can do is convert it to a shared mailbox. The primary drawback to doing that is, even though you no longer burn a license, you have no active way to log in or log out as that account. But what you can do is assign delegation. So you could have their manager or HR, particular people, assigned to have access, any kind of access you need, whether it's full or send as to that mailbox, and then save it that way. You don't have to pay for the license. You don't have to worry about storage. Shared accounts have 50 gig quota as far as storage goes, as well as for their archive. If you have an archive on their account that's already existing, it will pull that, and then you will now have an archive for the shared account.
And so something you told me about earlier, so if the mailbox is 49.9 gigs, you can go ahead and create an archive from that shared mailbox and archive, say, 25 gigs of it, so that you don't go over that 50 gigs and start accruing costs there.
That is correct. That is correct. If this originally was listed as a loophole, people thought that Microsoft decided or forgot to charge for storage for shared items or shared accounts, but they've never made any changes to it. So until then, this is a great way to store data for employees that are no longer there. We don't worry about, you know, offboarding and dumping everything into a PST and worrying about storage for those PSTs. So we're going to convert this to a shared mailbox. We want to go in the Exchange Admin Center to our recipients area, look for Megan's account. I'm going to click on it and go to the right-hand side, convert to a shared mailbox. And say, are you sure you want to do this? You say yes. It will take a few minutes here. This will say a few seconds, but usually takes a couple minutes on the other side. Once it's closed, it shows that it's now a shared type with an archive. At that point, what I recommend is go to mailbox delegation and decide who you want to have as far as delegate access. So if you want someone to have full access, someone from HR or their former supervisor, go ahead and have them added here, and they can go through there at any time and look at their mail. This is still an active mailbox, so if they have any external contacts or clients that sends information to them, you'll still have access to it. It's still an active mailbox. All right. So there we go. So another thing we might want to worry about is in your environment, if you're using mobile device management, even the basics that come with your Office 365 license, you want to keep them from having access to that data through their mobile device. So absolutely, we can do that through Exchange as well. So let's go back to the Admin Center. And for here, we're going to go back to Megan. We'll open up here.
You got to double click here, right?
That's correct. Double click on that to get it open. And we're going to go over to mobile devices. You know what? I've done that already. Let me go back here. And I know what we did. We already converted over to a shared account.
Oh, so
We
it
might
doesn't
want
show
to.
if we do that first.
No, we should have moved that over first. So they no longer have access. Then again, at this point, we're going to worry about if they still have a valid token, but as long as we do that PowerShell command, they no longer have access to it. So I just realized we moved that over to shared. But if you need to, that slide is on there, and that's always a good recommendation to have. Depending on your organizations, I've had some where they just disable that off the bat until they get into more robust mobile device management as far as the policies on how they'll access their data externally out of the organization. Tim. Here we go. Okay, another thing we want to do is make sure that we move their OneDrive content. One of the processes that will happen if you go through and just say you want to delete the license, it will remind you if they have OneDrive content to remove it before you pull a license, because if you pull the license and you don't move it, it will go to a soft delete in the deleted users area, and then after 30 days, Microsoft will purge that data and there is no way to get that back.
And let's put an exclamation point on that one. There's no way to get it back. And that was why we got requested to do this, is that a admin was not aware of that and did not know that the user they were deleting had OneDrive content that they would need 45 days later. So by the time they went back to go, oh, hey, that user had this. Nope, sorry, it's gone.
Absolutely, yeah. I've had a couple calls on that where a user will leave the organization, and it depends on how it's done. In this particular situation, and this is a good point to bring this up, they were using Azure Active Directory Connect to sync their local directory up to Office 365. Typical IT organizations in the past, if someone's leaving, what they would do is disable the account and then move that account to an OU or organizational unit, an Active Directory that is not being synced with Office 365. In a normal environment, that's fine. If you're using Office 365, the problem you run into is that if you move that into an OU that is not being synced, the next time Azure Active Directory Connect runs a sync, it will delete that account in Office 365. So that's what this person did. They moved them to an OU. It wasn't synced. The next sync cycle deleted the account. It was sitting in the deleted accounts in Office 365 in the user admin portal. However, they forgot about it for 30 days. So once they came back, the account's been deleted. It's no longer showing it in deleted accounts because it's been purged after its 30 days and there was no way to get the data back. Unfortunately, this person had several years with a PO stored on their OneDrive.
Ouch.
So that kind of leads to another discussion for another day on really what's the best practice to do with that data. Should it be in someone's OneDrive for Business account, or should that be someplace else, either through Teams or through SharePoint?
Well, why don't we go ahead and do this?
All right, let's go to OneDrive here. So we'll go back to the user admin area. We will go look for Megan. So once we're in there, we want to go to the OneDrive tab.
There we go.
And then we want to go to, first thing we do, we can access the files from here. So if we're going to do it ourselves, we can hit access files. And here's the link that we get that we now have access. We simply put that in a URL and we have access to it.
You know, what's nice is this does click and open another window. So go ahead and pull it up and let's see what it looks like.
What does Megan have? So they had quite a few documents in here. So you can look based off what's in there. some HR files we might not want to.
Well, you've got annual reports there that are still marked as private, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So, and then of course, if you have something that's being shared out with other individuals, if it's gone, they lose their access with it as well.
And one thing I will say is in other demos for Microsoft Security, that financial report is what she keeps sending out and keeps getting pinged by the DLP policies. We caught you.
Yep, we have that quite a few, and especially if you have policies for HIPAA, if it finds that information, it will most definitely ping you on that. So let's cut over to the next one here. So we taking care of the OneDrive information. The next thing you want to do is simply remove the license. Now, like I said, if you try to do this first, it will go through and walk you through some of these steps. However, depending on how your organization is set up, it might not be in the direction or the order that you need to have that's going to help you save your data. So let's go back to that area. We'll go back to Megan's account here. And we simply go to product licenses, click edit. And we uncheck the boxes and hit save. Now, depending on the size of your organization, what your employee situation is like, you could either save those on hand for the next employee you have onboarding, or you can have your count reduced by 1 to save money going into the future, just depending on how fast your turnaround is. And we'll go on to the next one. And you're being slow today. And of course, when I go to manually do it, it shows up. So the next stop would be deleting the user account. Now, remember, make sure if you have this set up, so if you're doing forwarding or if you convert to a shared account, you don't want to delete the account. You want to make sure the litigation hold is in place. One thing you can do, since it is migrated to a shared account, is if you at that point you want to go to Azure Active Directory, or actually go to Active Directory on-prem and move that to a different OU, you can do that at that time. If the account is disabled in Active Directory, it will just simply show up in Office 365 as a blocked account.
And just for my own satisfaction, because I think we've come up here to the end, let's go ahead and delete her. Let's delete Megan. And I'm sure that my buddies at Microsoft who will be watching this on YouTube tomorrow will just get a little bit of satisfaction out of it.
So you can see all the different levels where it's been
and
checking just to make sure.
And it's going to warn you.
Absolutely.
So give it right there. There's a new checkbox that wasn't there last time I saw, but to give another user access to Megan Bowen's OneDrive files. So it looks like a simpler way to do that.
Absolutely. Like I said, this could be in an order that doesn't really work for your organization. So we will make sure we follow these steps. It's going to confirm that you have these. So it talks about the OneDrive data. And like we mentioned before, you have 30 days to restore this. After that, there's no way to bring the data back. We'll confirm the changes. And there is no longer an employee named Megan Bowen in Office 365.
Bye, Megan.
It's been real.
And I'll apologize about that PowerPoint slide. I was duplicating too quickly and left that litigation hold line there. All right, so this is the point where we get to questions. John, thank you very much. And let's see if there's any questions in the question panel. For those of you watching on YouTube or on our blog, feel free to check out the full write-up. The link is in the description below. Give us a like and follow, and we'll see you next week.